so much for joining my weekly series, Holistic Wisdom Life, Conscious Collective Awakening. Today's guest is Matthew Liam Gardner, and currently he is residing in Bali. And I'm excited to, not only for you guys to meet him and for him to share his message, but also for myself to discover more about Matthew, because I just find him such a fascinating person. We actually met by accident. A friend of mine invited me to be a part of his event online. And I was the last person to close his event. And somehow we just ended up communicating. And I knew that he was part of my soul family. And I just felt that he would be an amazing person to bring into this incredible conversation of awakening the collective consciousness of humanity, which has been my big mission. But before I introduce him, I want to read to you what he wrote as his introduction, which I find so fascinating. So he's a soul-driven, aquarian-age visionary, holding point for the future of humanity as we navigate into a new chapter of human story. As part of his legacy, Matthew works with, trains, and initiates emerging elders from all over the world in sacred and expansive journeys. He's also deeply focused on activating conscious men into deeply embodied conscious kings, deeply connected to their unique personal essence and activated in soul purpose leadership. Wow. I love all of it. I think every word of it I love. So for me, okay, let's first begin with your journey, where you started and how you ended up being in this mega vision for humanity, because it's always fascinating for people, I think, to understand the story behind what you do today.
Yeah, thank you, sister. You know, before I share a little bit of the story, I just want you to know it is like, it's so nice to be here with you. I just love you, and that there is just a, like, you know those human beings who just like radiate love and truth. Like, you were that, and it's just lovely to, you know, beyond the interview, beyond whatever when it comes tonight, it's just, I'm the biggest supporter, the biggest fan, the biggest enjoyer of your work, and it's just really lovely to get to dance together a little bit tonight, because I think we're going to have some fun today on your end.
Yes.
So a little bit about my story. I was the oldest brother. I was the oldest brother in a household without a father. And I made it my mission to be the example for my younger brothers. And so from like the age of like 6, I had decided that I was going to do whatever I had to do to work out how to, like, what it really meant to be a good person. That was kind of where it began for me. I'm like, I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to do whatever, because I've got these brothers, they're 3 years younger than me. They're going to grow up without a dad. How do I respond to that? And so it set this really early frame for me of always looking into the unseen, always looking into the unknown, and finding my own truth. And so that set in place my entire life, like from the age of 6 all the way through. You know, I was reading personal development books by the end of primary school, like elementary school. I was diving deep into the truths of the universe in my teenage years. I essentially just was prepared to go wherever I had to go, spend whatever I had to spend, learn from whoever I had to learn from, to be just the best big brother I could. And so it naturally transitioned as I became a young adult into mentorships and coaching and all of these sorts of worlds. And it was a really natural transition for me. I found myself on the day of my 21st birthday, actually with my father for the first time in 14 years. And he'd been living in Papua New Guinea the whole time. And so I was with him in Papua New Guinea. He'd been living with a village, a tribe of sorts in Papua New Guinea. And so on my 21st birthday, I got to like spend time with my father. I got to be inducted in some beautiful way into the local community, into the village. I got given my own Papua New Guinean name, which was Kanamon. And I remember so it's Kanamon, Kanamon. And so I remember looking into the eyes of the chief. So as the chief gave me this name, gave me this village name, I remember looking into his eyes and seeing that he was a man just like myself. And I'm like, this man has the power to give people names. Like, that's the power this man has. And I just, looking into his eyes, all I felt was this mirror back of I'd kind of been in some ways like the leader in my family for my brothers. And so here was a chief who's a leader for his village. And I, in my own little cute way, being the leader in my own. And so I went back to Australia after that, and I actually gave myself my own name, a whole another name. And then so for 11 years, if I had been on this call 18 months ago, you wouldn't have introduced me as Matthew Liam Gardner. You would have introduced me as Run Wild, because for 11 years, my actual name was Run Wild.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I went on, I lived as Run Wild for 11 years, and you can imagine a life with a name like Run Wild, the sort of adventures that you just invite into your life, because you're playing in these frequencies of exploration, adventure. And it was very much this young man journey for me to find the fringes of what is true, the fringes of what is possible, and the fringes of what I'm capable of as well, which I think is a journey that all young men need to go on in their own way. But yeah, so what it did is it brought me to this moment in time where I felt complete and ready to transition into a deeper level of adulthood. And about 18 months ago, I actually reclaimed my birth name in this beautiful sacred process. And yeah, here I am, Matthew Liam Gardner, and it's been one hell of a journey that's involved, like probably a lot of people watching this and yourself, lots of businesses and books and, adventures into the unknown and all sorts of, crazy, beautiful, magical people. And so I feel really blessed to have had my journey, feel really blessed to have learned from who I've learned from. And now I get to be here, and I just get to be all that I am and come forward as myself in the world.
That is so beautiful. Did you ever have a moment, or perhaps time, where you were doubting yourself, where you had fears of uncertainty, if this was a path you were supposed to take? Because I know that for me, I definitely had that moment. And also I knew so deeply in my heart that I had to take the leap and I had to jump, because the soul's calling was so much bigger than what everyone else expected around me for me to be, right, to embody. So I'm wondering if you had that moment, or moments perhaps, where you had the doubt, the question, and then, yeah, go ahead.
Totally. Like my journey was not a clear straight line journey. It had zigzags. Like the amount, I say that I started coaching 14 years ago because I did my first coaching session 14 years ago that I got paid for. And along the way, I had different jobs, and I worked on cattle stations, and I became a teacher. I was an English teacher for a bit. I spent a year, almost a whole year, traveling around this Southern Hemisphere, doing poetry and taking photos full time. There was all these little dances in and out, and I doubted, to be honest, it was like I spent 10 years just fighting with this internal battle of am I truly, the whispers that I hear, are they at a mind level or are they at a divine level? Are these whispers that I'm here to actually do something that truly means something to me? Are they divine or are they logic? And it took me a decade to work out that they were divine. It really did. And so I every day for me for a decade was a question mark. And my abundance reflected that for a decade. What I was able to receive or not receive reflected that for a decade. And yeah, I remember, one part of my journey was that I found myself homeless at one point in my life. I went through that journey of homelessness, and it actually began as some version of minimalism, but then spiraled into a mental health journey where I just couldn't get myself out of it, you know? And so there's all these little, like, there's these little side paths that come with a life of adventure and the edges, where we find ourselves faced with the demons or the dragons or the, you know, the unexpected. And for me, that one of them was homelessness, and then like mental health being challenged while I'm in this state. And it's like, cool, like you're in a challenging space and your mental health isn't super clean and clear. So how do you come to empowerment to come out of that? And I truly feel that my adult life has been this constant, like, rising and then falling and then finding new pieces of myself and then rising again. And yeah, so I find myself in a much more, like, it feels quite whole where I'm at right now. The falls seem less and the highs seem even higher.
That's wonderful. And that's kind of the next question I want to ask you, because I know for me, and you're talking, and perhaps we can clarify what aquarian age is. What I'm finding is, and this is also based on some of the things I've been looking at, because for me, I've been studying consciousness and reading consciousness of, measuring consciousness of systems, people, kind of everything that made up and makes up our three-dimensional reality. Like, I really wanted to understand, and I did that with my partner. And I found, I would say most things actually are so on point of what makes up our reality, which is kind of sad, I would say, because most of it is based on manipulation. And what I'm finding, and this is why I also invited you here, because for me, it's about true leaders that have gone through so many things versus saying, okay, you know, here's a way you can make millions. You have to join my program, and I'm the one that's going to teach you, you know, what I understand, because for me, my model is working on health with people and reading consciousness. I'm reading the human morphogenetic field. There's not one system, one tablet, one magic pill that is going to fix everything for anyone, including the business. And it's so interesting because our three-dimensional model that we have, the 3D, is actually failing. And I've had so many people, because I'm not a business coach, but so many people will say to me that whatever they went and ventured out as a business person to be coached on, right, by all these leaders that are huge Instagrammers and Facebook leaders that have hundreds of thousands of followers and put these goddess pictures out all the time, but they're actually not in alignment, because they're not individualized and customized to every person's need. What I perceive, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to me, aquarian age, moving into that age, is all about individualization and the unique divine essence of every human being that exists, and is bringing that out. So please explain how you see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you for, like, letting me speak about this. It's like, I'm so passionate about this particular piece. It's actually huge. You know, I find that the more that we zoom out, in life, the more that we truly see. And one of the examples is, you know, you can lay on a trampoline and look at the stars at nighttime. You know, like just at nighttime, there's stars, you're just on a trampoline looking up at them. And you can focus on one or two stars and you can kind of zoom in on them and just look at those kind of little cluster of stars. And that's all you see. Everything else turns to black. But when you kind of like just soften your gaze a little bit and you allow in the things on the fringes, you allow in the fullness of the sky, all of a sudden you get to actually receive it all. And so there's really an invitation here for everyone as we transition into a new age, which at a cosmic level, at an energetic level, I mean, if you look at the changes we're going through right now, there's big shifts in the world at a 3D level. Like, as we transition into this new age, and we are transitioning, it's a fact, it's a thing, it's actually happening, even even coming into the 2000s or 2012, we're literally coming into new time eras in the human history. The more you zoom out, the more you see. So a lot of people zoom out and they see 10 years. A lot of people zoom out and they might see a lifetime. Some people zoom out and they see a few hundred years. But when you zoom out and you see millions, if not billions of years all at once, you begin to actually find and see the truths of what this all is. And so the Aquarian age is we've just been in the Piscean age since around Jesus-y times, like roughly around those like 1 BC sort of times. And we're transitioning into the Aquarian age. At a planetary level, it's significant. At an energetic level, it's significant. And at a social, societal, cultural level, it's massively significant. Essentially, what I'm saying is we're transitioning into a time where the only thing that is going to work for us as a collective and individually in our happiness, in our truth, in our relationships, is us actually landing our soul essence on earth, in our bodies, in this moment in time, and then bringing that through unwaveringly, like bringing the full truth of what we are as a soul being, as a light being, or whatever you want to call it, the essence, like the fundamental essence of what we are, landing here on earth. And it's actually it's this combination of individuals in their essence that begins to create, because an essence is like a frequency. A planet has a frequency. That's why astrology is significant. Each planet, Earth has its own frequency. You can listen to it with like sound instruments. You can listen to the difference between Earth and the moon, the difference between the sun and Earth, the difference between Pluto and Earth. They literally have different frequencies. You can track it on the little measurement scales. And so Earth has its own frequency. So do I. I have my own unique frequency that is actually precedes even my biology. And so my journey here on earth is to bring the fullness of that through, to bring the depth of my essence through. It's the same for everybody else in my eyes. And so when we're all in our essence, when we're all in our unique frequencies, void of, I can talk about the matrix and ideas like this, or like the ideas of, restricting systems, or immature masculine political systems that actually hold us back from our essence. But when we're all in our essence, all of a sudden there is an individual frequency that is in all the individuals. And that creates a collective frequency, a collective vibration that creates a whole new world. And it is at a feeling level, an energetic level, an experience level. And so the deeper that every individual comes into their essence, the deeper the collective comes into their essence. And when the collective comes into their essence, all of a sudden, we genuinely have change on earth, like actually, and we talk about it as if it's just some kind of short-term, change on earth, as if it's some kind of throwaway term. But there has been dozens of significant, massive worldwide changes on earth just in the frame of the human journey, just in the time humans have been around. So we're coming into the next one. And I think that talking about essence and the individual essence of one is actually the same conversation as the collective change and the collective earth that we're creating.
Absolutely. And one thing for me is since last year, I've been monitoring the collective consciousness. So I said I was looking at systems and people, but I've also started to track the collective consciousness of humanity. And when I first measured it, I was a little disappointed, but it also made sense. We were somewhere between 194 and 204. So 500 being the frequency of love, right? 1,000 is like the pure avatar level. 194 to 204 was kind of low. What is fascinating to me, even though we're going through this massive polarization at the moment, there's so much chaos that's happening, the collective consciousness of humanity has doubled, which I find fascinating, because I'm seeing, based on, and that's the question I want to ask you too. Are you feeling it? Are you seeing it? Because if you read people's posts, I've never seen so much duality, so much disagreements. I mean, on every level, religious, political, whatever it might be. People with OCDs are against people that are not, it's just right now there's such a separation. But yet I find that there are people, unique individuals that are focusing on this positive space and holding the light to help the rest of those that perhaps are unaware or they're still fighting their own battles to hold the space for them to shift. And it was fascinating over the last month and a half to see the numbers double, at least in what I've been following. So I wanted to see with you, what are some of the feedback? Because you've also been holding a lot of events online, in person over the years. What have you noticed, and what are some of the feedback that you're receiving on that topic?
I love your questions. Let's just do this forever. So So we come into a time, we've come into a time where there is an opportunity for a little bit of quiet. There's an opportunity for a little bit of quiet. And yes, there's lots of noise and people are speaking. Some people are speaking more than they've ever spoken. And also those people who are speaking more than they've ever spoken, me being one of those people, I find myself in moments where I'm listening deeper than I've ever listened. And there is a collective quiet on earth. You know, you see it tangibly in the rivers that have cleared. You see it tangibly in the dolphins returning to certain bays. You see it in, you know, lions walking down city streets in Africa. Like this integration of like nature, little already just bit by bit kind of coming back. That's like the tangible nature version of it. But at a human level, there's this collective community quiet. And I am experiencing it almost like it, as much, whether it's forced or not, whether whatever's happening in the world is, you know, deeply real or intended or whatever the, you know, different perspectives are. We are in a hibernation right now. We are in a hibernation, and that hibernation takes us into ourselves. And as we come into ourselves, we come to see the truth of where we're at, the truth of who we are, the truth of how we feel. And in that quiet, in that inwardness, in that moment in time where we're connected to our bodies, we actually come closer to our connection to the divine than any other time, because our body, you know, our body and our is almost like an antenna for the frequencies of the universe, or whatever whatever everyone's individual. I'm Aquarian, so I'm just like, yeah, just the general everything. You know, we use our bodies as our antenna for that. And so people are coming into and actually listening to their antenna. And as they listen, they're listening. What they're hearing is actually quite beautiful a lot of the time. There's a lot of beauty to be heard. And so I see people listening and then actually stepping forward. Like as people come into their bodies, they come into their matter. And from a masculine, feminine energy perspective, the body is almost like it's matter. So it's a feminine concept. It's quite complicated, this idea, but it's a feminine concept. So they come into their feminine-ish concept, their matter, and all of a sudden their creativity becomes more activated. So they're feeling called to sing, and they're feeling called to, like we're feeling called to sing. Some of us are feeling called to paint. Some of us are feeling called to pull out the sound bowl they haven't played with for 10 years and go live on Facebook and just like make sound with that sound bowl, and, you know, give a little bit of themselves and be creative and just play and dance in life. You know, dancers are dancing. They've got all this time at home, so they're just dancing in front of the mirror, and all of a sudden they're kind of like building shows, and people are doing like dance shows to people across the world. And so we're in this creative bubble. And so when you look at it and you think about it, where else in the history of the world have we had this creative, like this enforced, juicy, just full of creativity explosion? The Renaissance. And so we're in, you know, and it presents as like, one of the ways it presents right now is that mainstream media, bit by bit, is being the second choice to like this like people created content, like kind of like what we're doing right now. People all over the world coming in and bringing their essence and their voice forward, and people are listening and enjoying it. And it's because it's meaningful. It's so meaningful. You know, it's so meaningful. And so when people listen, even if the guitar isn't like the guitar playing isn't from a professional or someone who has played on stages all around the world, it means something, because here's a father playing his guitar to his daughter while we get to watch live. And it becomes beautiful. And all of a sudden, this like content creation and this art becomes beautiful. And so what I'm seeing is the world is already changing. And it's through the metaphor of social media is one of those ways. The metaphor of the animals returning is another way. But we find ourselves in this space where it's just beautiful. Like the next age is ripe for the picking right now.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Another topic that keeps coming up, and I know for me it's been coming up for years, because I decided, and we can elaborate on this. I decided, of course, to leave a very traditional medical training, and I worked as a pharmacist for many years, to follow my soul's passion and my heart, to do energy medicine, to practice energy medicine. And what's amazing to this day is how people define success. And I find it that for people like you and I, and we can define that, I think it's also moving into the Aquarian age. It's about redefining what success means. And in the old, I would say, the matrix that is built, the 3D matrix, success is all about material wealth and money, where I don't see it as that. For me, at least, and perhaps for you, and I want to hear that from you. It's about joy. It's about happiness. It's about just all the positive things. Of course, financial abundance is great, but to me, I don't define that as success. So it's really difficult to have conversations with people who only view success based on material things. And I'm wondering what your feedback about that is, and what do you see is happening as far as shifting into a different kind of paradigm?
This is so humanity is going to be slapped in the face over and over again until it gets exactly what you're saying. Like, there is no other path than exactly what you're saying. There is literally no other, like, humanity existing in a reality where, like, with the, like, that matrix, like that idea of success that is about, like, money as the definition, or what, like, or even like outcome, even like specifically outcome as the definition of success, rather than just the beingness and the truth of ourselves and the here we are and this is the success. Like, we've already arrived, that is the success. Humanity will not survive, like, just straight up, because if you look at, so that's the reason that we're, what you and I are calling the matrix here. The current paradigm of that matrix, the current concept of that matrix has been built over the last 2,000 years, specifically the last 500 years, as dominant masculine frequency, immature masculine frequency leadership. So just even think about our political systems right now. They're super immature masculine. And what I mean by that is they bicker, they fight, there's agendas, there's like all this stuff behind the scenes. People are out to get other people. People are negotiating and stepping away from value systems because of the negotiation. And in some cases, they're forced to, because the system that they created, or like we as humanity, or especially the masculine frequencies here, created, doesn't allow them to be in their truth, doesn't allow them to be in their essence. They have to lie. They have to fight. And so they're the very system that kind of gave us a bit of like solidness and safety, even though it was immature originally, is the very system that we find ourselves stuck in right now. And it needs to, like, the whole thing, like the entire political system needs to shift. The entire way that leaders of Earth, not just politicians, but, entrepreneurs, like people whose voices are listened to. As everyone drops into their essence and they drop into listening deeply, if a leader isn't embodied, if they aren't truly fulfilled, but they're speaking about money as the end goal, people are going to lose interest. It's about like all the BS, all of the pretending, all of the false masks, all of the pedestaling. It's like going to start dying bit by bit, because humanity's waking up to the truth, and we've been spending so much time in like pretending and putting on a show and acting, that we've been conditioned so deeply to just be okay with, just pretending in front of us, and almost trust this pretending. But people are becoming discerning. People are listening. And so with that is going to come, bit by bit, whole new political systems. With that is going to come, this is why I call myself the Aquarian-age sage, because I love to like track the things that are gonna like take place because of all this. We're transitioning into a whole different reality. I invite everyone watching right now to even if you already consider yourself successful, to redefine what success means to you, to really look in the mirror, to really ask the questions, not just what does success look like, but what does it genuinely feel like? Because if you're not having that feeling, if that feeling is not landing in our body, then it's not actually success. And if, if we get caught, sorry, one last little piece is, if we get caught in this like wheel, this almost like hamster wheel of I'm only successful if I have that, if I have that, if I have that, we're never complete. And that's the exact system that keeps us stuck in the system.
Exactly. You know what I realized over the years, that what is all the systems are built on is actually fear. There's only one word, and it's such a low vibration. I mean, fear is the opposite of love, right? And fear creates anxiety, right? As a side effect, and we become sick because of this fear. And even to this day, like I'll tell, for example, I had something published in one of the large publications. The first question my father, loved my father, he asked, how much money did they pay you to write an article? Or to interview? I said, Dad, this is not how it works. But you see, he's been programmed to think that this is the only way success is measured, and everything is measured on money. But he also comes from a system where you had a job, you worked for a company, you had salary. So it's a very different, I think when you become an entrepreneur, you already break all the boundaries and you have to break through your own fears. So I would say what you just, in reference to what you said, is to redefine success means to really face your own fears. And then find out, are you creating your success based on your fears, or are you creating it based on love? And that's the different kind of paradigm that we have to shift into, right?
Yeah, love it.
Okay, let's talk about the masculine, because you're talking about taking the men from a journey of being men to kings, right? And the divine kings. And I, of course, to me, every human being is a divine being, and it's all about recognizing that divinity within you. So I would love to hear your feedback as far as the masculine, healing the divine masculine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's to begin with, it's all tied in together. Like the systems on earth, the leaders of, like, the people who choose to step forward as leaders, it's all tied in to what we get to experience and the frequencies that we're vibrating at. So men, and I say men specifically because there's been, it's really interesting. Over the last 2,000 years, there's been far too few genuinely embodied men in the king phase of their journey. And as I say, king phase as a life stage where they're like, you know, they have their family, or they have their close circle of kin, they have abundance, they almost freely get to impact, they're looking after people in their kingdom. Like this really established phase of life. Usually it lands around 45 or sometimes 50 with people, if they, you know, and I say this for a very small number of people does it ever truly lands. And that's the whole problem, because brothers never get there when they're stuck in exactly what we're talking about, when they're stuck in this fear response life. And so I found myself being mentored by so many men who couldn't even look me in the eye, And the fear and the distortion was so deep in the guys that I was being mentored by in my early 20s, that I was like, what? Surely there's something more than this. Surely there is like an, you know, and not having had a father when I grew up as well, I was always looking for like some masculine role model who was embodied, could speak from the heart, could be landed, could own his sex, you know, to not be shamed, to own his vulnerability. And I just, wherever I looked, I kept finding, I found people who were close, and a lot of the time the people who were close would also have this ego, this kind of deep, like penetrative ego associated, and it just felt yucky. And so, you know, I'm not here, I'm far from like the integrated fully embodied man. I'm so far from it, but I'm committed to a life path of continuing to face the truth of myself and continuing to come forward in the fullness of who I am, and also the humbleness of my like, you know, simple existence, you know, like the fact that it's all of this could end in any moment. I could disappear tomorrow and everything would still keep going. Everything would still be okay, you know? And so it's this beautiful combination of humbleness and owning power, and, you know, solidness in self, and able to communicate with the truth of feeling and heart that I really look for in men. And I truly believe that when men start to integrate these pieces and they start to step forward with, like, in owning their sex, like, you know, literally having relationships with their sexual organs that are healthy and not shaming and numbing and pushing away, owning, like, really being connected to their heart, being landed in their bodies and not numbing and away from their bodies. All of a sudden, what starts to happen is we have men leaders coming through who aren't numbing. They're not hiding. They can't lie because they don't lie. And so as men leaders come through, so does the system change bit by bit. And so this is it's like my humble way of contributing to this aquarian age shift. You know, I'm really working with the men who are already leaders, who are already, or, you know, they're kind of emerging as leaders, who are already have medicine and power. And I'm like, I get to look them in the eye and I get to go, brother, like, what is the truth of your essence? And what does it look like with you fully landed in your body, knowing in humbleness that you could disappear in any moment, and also bringing through the fullness of your being. And so that sweet spot right there, that's where I want to see our politicians at. And that's where I want to see our, like, the entrepreneurs who speak and are listened to at. And I feel like when that happens, all of a sudden, the ripples start to shift. First of all, the feminine, like the integrated feminine, the embodied feminine, far outweighs the embodied masculine on earth. Like almost 9 to 1, almost 9 to 1. And so the women, they're ready to meet. The women are ready to meet the men in this embodied, healthy, loving, like respecting our past, naming the truth of the now, and building a beautiful future. The women are ready to meet the men in that. And so now I'm just a flag holder for the men as they come forward to have this crossover with the women, you know?
That is so great. And would you say that it's actually difficult for most men to acknowledge and connect to that essence, to that unique essence and the vulnerability? Would you say that's a difficult part for men to do because of the society?
It's so easy. it's so easy.
Yes.
Yeah, the truth is it's so easy, but are they prepared to go where they've never gone? Are they prepared to find the fringes of themselves and play there and know the parts of them that they haven't always known? You know, and like as a man in my mid-30s, there are pieces of myself I continue to discover. And I've been diving for like 20 years in personal development. And I'm like, whoa, you know, I remember the very first time, I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this, sister, but I remember the first time that I realized sacred wasn't just a word, it was a feeling. And I remember the very first time that I felt sacredness. I actually felt sacredness. And I was like, whoa, there is so much more to my reality and there's such a deeper meaning to my existence than I ever thought was the truth. And so, you know, you say, is it difficult for men? The only reason it's difficult is because men aren't giving themselves permission to have deeply meaningful lives. And to see, you know, you and I love the astrology piece. And part of the reason I love astrology and like the zoomed out cosmic pieces is because it brings meaning to us. You know, through astrology and some other journeys, you can actually get a rough idea of your soul path. And the moment you have that soul path, like that very rough A to B, all of a sudden you can't run away from yourself anymore. It's like, there it is. How prepared are you to meet that? You know, how prepared are you to lean in to the truth of what you're here to do? And it just creates this deep meaning. And I see it in men's eyes. Like when I see a man who's beautiful, like he's bringing together earth plants in a healing way and alchemizing, like doing alchemy to create these beautiful remedies for people. And I look at him in the eye and I'm like, you're like an earth wizard. You're an earth magician. I can see the earth wizard in you. I see their eyes light up because there's this like almost fantasy-based meaning that comes with it. And, you know, we live in this unlimited reality, and it's become bland and sterile and four walls and, you know, kind of like harsh lights. And men, the moment that we start to return to deep meaning and like the truth of our existence and our, you know, what we're here to do, all of a sudden there's a purpose. And the greatest wound of the masculine, the greatest wound of men on earth is purpose, because women create life. And we're moving into an era continuously where more and more men are not, you know, like needed at a biological level, and men feel that like that there is a collective wound there. It's deep for men. So when men find meaning, they find feeling.
Very interesting. So for you, moving forward, what would you like the world and everyone who is listening to know? I guess, what is your final message to the world about you and your mission and whatever it is that you want to share?
Thank you, sister.
Yeah.
I just want you all to know I love you. Like we are all different branches of the same tree. And the more that we come to realize that, the more that we can connect in the truth of who we are to each other. Yeah, I just want you to know that I genuinely care. Like genuinely care. Like humanity is my number one priority. Myself and then humanity, you know, are my two kind of like prime priorities, and everything else kind of like gets to work in with that. And you know, you are humanity, my partner is humanity, so it all works in together. Yeah, I just want you to know I love you, that we get to do this, that there's a new age coming, and I'm committed to speaking what I see and enjoying the ride and continuing to push the edges. And I invite you to be too.
Thank you so much. That is so beautiful. And I'm sure you've inspired with your message and your genuine caring heart for people to really trust their path and hopefully feel inspired to also be themselves, courageously be themselves. So thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you. Thank you.